this is a topic that I came up with based on an interaction I had on social media in the past week, which really shocked me, honestly. Of course, I hate whenever I get to the point where I think, oh, social media is like a good place, and then you realize that it's not. There's just a lot of negativity out there. And it came about because there was somebody on social media talking about, which is in the news literally every day, is the gender transition surgeries in kids. And so, you know, I'm pretty passionate about that. We did a segment about that I don't think that that's a good idea because of all the various reasons that we talked about on that episode. And so I made a post, said, hey, you know, I'm a plastic surgeon. I actually will do gender transition surgeries in adults, you know, under the right circumstances. I don't do a lot. I do maybe one every year or year and a half. So I'm not out there doing these surgeries all the time. But I don't think that it should be done in children because of the various reasons that I stated. And so it kind of blew up, and I caught like a ton of flack. But I didn't get flack because I said that children shouldn't do it, which, you know, I thought somebody might say, oh, well, they should, and I mean, that's their opinion. I caught flack because I said that I'm okay with adults doing it. Like, it was crazy. My mentions were like blowing up with people that said that, oh, why are you doing this? And this is bad and people shouldn't do it. And like, it really kind of depressed me, honestly. I don't know. The way I feel about it with people that want to do gender transition is that, you know, well, everyone in the world, and especially us as Americans, I mean, what do we want? Like, we want to be free, right? You know, free to live our life how we want to live.
Yeah,
and
free to be happy.
Free to love who we want to love, free to express ourselves how do we want to express, and do it without, you know, being fear of being persecuted.
Yeah, you might have gotten extra flack because it's Pride Month.
But I was getting flack from the opposite direction.
Oh.
Yeah,
I know, but from like people that were like just extra hypersensitive.
Anyway, I mean, as far as that goes and like freedom, I mean, that should carry on to our bodies. Like our bodies are our biggest form of self-identity. And so, you know, it's an inherent right that people, if they're not harming someone else, should be able to do what they want with their own bodies. And people do it already. It's been done for decades. I mean, there's body modifications. There's things like plastic surgery. There's changing your hairstyle. Yeah, I mean, there's so many things. And I feel like that has to apply to people that want to have gender transition surgery as well. I mean, you know, going through that process for people is not some snap decision. I mean, it's a decision that they make over years with lots of soul searching and going to medical appointments and, you know, having to deal with, you know, all the stigma that goes along with it. I mean, you know, gender dysphoria is a real thing. We know that. It's accepted worldwide. And so, you know, when people want to go through that, they should be respected, or at least left alone and not attacked. And, you know, once again, I think, you know, the American populace, like, of all people, should respect people's right to personal freedom. You know, if someone's not harming someone else, then there's no reason that they shouldn't be able to do what they want to do. And, you know, that goes for even if it's something that's not something along societal norms, or maybe it's something that's not even within your own comfort zone, or maybe you don't even agree with it. And I think that that's the way it should be, because if we say to one person that you can't do with your body what you want to do, you know, you're a consenting adult, you can't do with your body what you want to do, then what's next?
Yeah.
Is plastic surgery next? Is wearing your hairstyle next? So I think it's a slippery slope, and it really kind of bummed me out. And I even had doctors telling me that there's no data that shows that gender transition surgery helps. And I was like, I know that's not right. I mean, I don't know the studies, I can't quote them, but I know that's incorrect. And so I want to do a segment on what are the long-term effects of gender transition surgeries for adults. Well, once again, as I said, and you can look at the other episode, I think it's wrong in kids. There's a whole bevy of reasons that I think that that's not right. So transgender Americans do make about 1% of the population. So it's, you know, a significant amount. What is that? 3.5 million people in the United States.
What are the things that are considered to be transgendered? Like, what do you have to be?
Well, I think that
characteristics do you have to have?
Oh, right. Okay. So it's somebody who suffers from gender dysphoria, meaning that they feel as though their phenotypic body, so, you know, a male body is not the right body for them, or vice versa. And so you know, kind of going through that process of recognizing gender dysphoria, it's very important that people seek out a mental health professional. And I don't mean that in a bad way, like, okay, you have a...
Well, it's a confused, I mean, to me, I'm confused by it, so I can only imagine a person
right.
that's
You can only imagine people that's
that,
undergoing it would be
like,
confused about all that.
What's wrong with me?
And I'm going to talk about some of the, like, the effects that has on people. There's a lot of research into people who have gender dysphoria and the things that they suffer from versus the average adult.
Just growing up thinking you're different than a group of people.
Right, it's hard enough to grow up, you know, when you don't have issues that big.
If you just think you're just a little bit different than somebody, it like messes with your head. So you can only imagine.
So I just want to talk a bit about, for those who don't know, like the process, and the process of gender transition is very individualized, and it doesn't always go by these steps, but these are kind of some of the steps that people will go through who have gender dysphoria, who decide that they want to transition. The first is self-identification, you know, self-reflection and knowing what identification that you really are. Next is coming out and letting people know that, you know, telling friends, telling family. Following that would be like a social transition, things like you might change your name, change your pronouns, change your clothing, change your appearance. As I said, psychotherapy, psychological or psychiatric evaluation, that is important. It's not a negative. It's not something that should be looked down upon. It's very important in the process to have that mental health support. The next steps would be the bigger steps, things like hormone replacement therapy, so taking hormones to initiate sex characteristics of the gender that you want to be. Legal transition, so legally changing your name, changing legal documents, and then you would get on to surgical transition, which would be either top or bottom surgery or both for people. And then lastly would be the continued mental health support. And so one of the things I found striking was how many people thought that there's no data to show that this is helpful. And so I know I'd seen the data out there. I knew there was a lot of data. I mean, gender transition surgeries have been coming around for decades.
Yeah.
The first one was like in the 50s or 60s. Like, this is not like a new technology, although the technology has gotten better and better as the years have gone on. So I did a pretty good literature search on this, specific to transgender patients who'd undergone surgery and what were those effects. And so I got some data, and at the end I'm going to post this data. Oh, here it is right here. So I pulled more studies in this. These are the studies that I'm quoting, and I'm not going to name them all because they're very long titles, but that's 4 of them, and then I pulled 4 more. So if you want to go back and look at these studies, you can. I think there's another set of them. Travis, you got the next one up there? Yeah, there we go. So these are the studies that I'm going to be quoting here for the data that we have. And the first thing I do want to say is that most patients who do gender transition surgery do wait at least 1 or 2 years. I saw a thing out there today on social media about I think it was the Matt Walsh blog, called some clinic that was doing like overnight transition surgery, which I would be very much against. I mean, that's just a terrible, terrible idea. But most people who go through the process in the right way do wait at least 1 or 2 years. And also the DCIS rates. Remember we talked about DCIS, which is where people change their mind about their gender identity. For kids, it was really high. That's why I'm against that in kids. In adults who go through gender transition surgeries, it's extremely low. It's a fraction of 1%, which I think is important. Because you want to make sure that people aren't doing these surgeries and then regretting that, because there are very difficult.
Some irreversible situations. I mean, it's practically
irreversible. So the studies I want to quote, first was the American Journal of Psychiatry from 2019. And this one talked about, in addition to the positives of transition surgery, the negatives that people with gender dysphoria have over the general population. So people with gender dysphoria have a 6 times risk of having mood or anxiety disorders. 3 times risk of being on medications for those, and this is the shocking one, a 6 times risk higher chance of having a suicidal episode, like trying to commit suicide. I mean, that's terrible. 6 times, that's so high.
Like going through or?
Attempting.
Yeah.
Attempting. Attempts, yeah.
No, I'm saying like people with those characteristics are going through transgender stuff, or
people with gender dysphoria.
Okay.
So this is people who feel like they're in the wrong body. It's not people who are going through
I thought you were talking about
through
the
no, that would be bad.
process.
No, this is on the front end for people who have gender dysphoria who feel like they're in the wrong body. Those people are at much higher risk for suicide attempts and mental health issues.
Yeah,
right.
Well, that makes sense.
So the study went on to talk about how does transition, and I'm talking specifically about surgical transition, because you could talk about how does social transition affect it, how does medical transition. I was speaking specifically to surgery because that's what I was talking about whenever this whole thing came about. So this study showed a statistically significant decrease in the need for mental health treatments after people went through transition. A study from JAMA, which is Journal of American Medical Association, Surgery, 2021, it had two groups, people who had gender transition surgery and people who wanted gender transition surgery but hadn't done it. And this one was pretty telling. It showed that there was a 42% decrease in psychiatric distress or psychiatric issues for people who had gone through the surgery, and a 44% decrease in suicidal ideation. So suicidal ideation means that I don't necessarily attempt to commit suicide, but I'm thinking about it, which is a precursor to people actually attempting or committing. There was a journal from Germany called the Medical Sheet, 2019. This one was a literature review. It actually looked at 13 articles talking about people who had gone through transgender surgery. And it showed that there was an increase in the well-being, sexuality, and the overall quality of life of people that went through transition. It did show that there's actually a decrease in the overall pain-free feeling of patients. I guess that's because they just went through big surgeries. That kind of makes sense. And an overall decrease in energy. And I just want to throw that out there because I think that you want to look at both sides of everything.
Yeah.
There was an article in 2022 from the Journal of Sexual Medicine. 37 patients before and after gender transition surgery showed increased quality of life, increase in self-esteem, and decrease in episodes of depression. So, and I'm going to just go ahead and list all these because I think that the data is pretty clear. International Journal Transgender 2022, 246 patients after transition surgery showed increase in quality of life, increase in self-esteem, decrease in depression, almost identical to the past.
Yeah.
Dutch study 2006, suicide rate of patients was 5 times less after gender transition surgery than before. Pretty significant. German study 2018, 156 patients with gender affirming surgery had overall high satisfaction rate with their surgery, overall increased quality of life. Lastly, Annals of Plastic Surgery, journal I know very well, 2022, 100 patients that went through the surgery, overall increase in well-being, high satisfaction rate in surgery, decrease in mental health issues, decrease in suicidal ideation. So, and that's not to say that, you know, going through gender transition surgery is without risk.
Yeah.
I mean, the surgeries are big surgeries. The ones I've done, I only do top surgeries. I haven't done tons of them either because most people that go through gender transition surgery go to people who only do that.
Yes.
I've caught a few over the years because they're not super complicated surgeries and I can do them pretty easily. What sex usually goes through the trans? It's mostly male to female is the biggest
That's
one.
What I thought.
I don't know the percentages. You always see the male to male is a little bit more common. I've done both ways, and like I said, not a ton, but yeah, I've done both ways. And the surgeries for the tops are pretty. The bottom surgeries, the big surgeries, you know, that's real big. You know, you're talking about trying to create something totally new than what you got. But anyway, it just honestly made me sad that, you know, people going through something so life-changing would have other people say that, you know, you shouldn't do that or you can't do that. I mean, I really feel like people, as long as they're not harming someone else, should be able to do to their bodies what they want. I mean, and I think most people deep down think that too, although I don't know, I was kind of questioning that. But I just wanted to kind of show that the data does show that for the people who are going through gender dysphoria, and this is for adults, not kids, that if they go through the transition, overall they're happier. You know, and overall their life, their well-being is better. The risk of them having significant psychiatric issues goes down. So I think the data is pretty clear.